Hi everyone, I'm Elle. I'm the host of the Speaking Tongues podcast, the podcast in conversation with multilinguals. And in this video, I want to talk to you about how I learned French in 2021. So, just a quick backstory. I always wanted to study French and I always wanted to learn the French language, and I didn't have an opportunity to do so until I was in college. So, I took one semester of a French class, and did I learn anything? Not really. It was just so hard for me to learn the language, and it took me a number of years to actually figure out why that was. And I realized late last year that the biggest issue that I had with learning French was my own level of confidence, my own fear of sounding stupid in front of natives. And anytime someone would speak to me in French, if I was traveling, like in Paris or in Belgium, I would just freeze up. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond, and my brain just shut off. I couldn't understand what someone was saying when they would talk to me. And it started to bother me that my real issue with the language wasn't that I wasn't learning the language or I didn't know what to say, but it was more that I didn't have the confidence to really speak up and talk about myself in the French language. So let's go back to the very beginning of this journey and the reason why I'm making this video. Late 2020, December 13th to be exact, I decided enough was enough and I wanted to start learning the French language for real, like for real, for real, for real. I'd already been doing this show for almost a year and I'd spoken to so many people who managed to learn French, and I started wondering to myself, like, why don't you just make the effort? Just do it. Just go for it. You have nothing to lose. So I picked up a journal and a pencil last December 13th, 2020, and I wrote my first sentences. Now, at this point, I hadn't even been in a French classroom for over a year, maybe 2 years. And I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to begin. I had a little dictionary. I should have brought that in here to show, but I had this little dictionary, and I had my notebook with the blank pages, and I just started writing. And then about a few days later, I realized I don't really know what I'm writing. I don't know if I'm making mistakes. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And I started to try to focus on writing shorter sentences and just things that I knew how to say. But after a few weeks, I thought, I'm better than this. I can get better than this. So I made an effort to try and get better. So when I realized it wasn't enough, I actually spoke to a friend of mine in the UK who suggested that I try a language exchange. Now, even though I've been doing this podcast for almost a year at this point, I wasn't familiar with language exchange. I hadn't actively made a step toward continuing my language study. So my friend suggested that I use this app called Tandem. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everybody knows Tandem, right? I did not know Tandem. I was in my own little world, doing my thing, wasn't really thinking about it. And I signed up for a Tandem account at the end of January of 2021. And when I tell you, I was so overwhelmed the first time that I signed up for this account and I opened this account, because within 30 minutes, I had 12 messages from people who wanted to practice with me. And I remember I instantly, I shut it down. I don't think I logged in again for like a week because it was really overwhelming. So when I eventually got the courage to go back on Tandem, I started looking for partners to speak French with and to exchange French and English with. And it was really daunting because, believe it or not, like, a lot of people were not very nice. I would make an effort to try to communicate in French, and they were just so quick to correct me. And I thought to myself, like, this isn't really helpful for me. This isn't really what I need. And it really made my confidence plummet. And found myself not even wanting to talk to anybody. But I got really lucky because at one point I met a French partner who lives in France, and he turned out to be such a wonderful partner, really great guy, really helped me with the language, and one of the first people I met on the app who wasn't trying to correct every single word and every single accent that I was writing. And so we started to talk. We started to talk in person, and I still remember that day of our first conversation. I was like, I couldn't even breathe. I was just like, I had knots in my stomach. I was so nervous, and I got through the conversation with him. It was horrible. It was so embarrassing, and it was really, really terrible. But he agreed, let's meet every day. Not every day, let's meet every week, and we'll practice every week. His English was so much better than my French at this point, and I realized in that conversation that this is my really big problem. Comprehension could not understand most of what he was asking me. And I also was still at that point where I was hearing French spoken to me and I just froze. I didn't know what to say. And the other thing was that I just didn't know what to say. I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't have the verb tenses. I didn't have the structure to help me understand how to respond. So I continued speaking with this guy once a week, and it was great. Really, really wonderful. And then after a while, I started to realize, since this is a free service and we're supposed to be exchanging language, I realized that I didn't really have a good control of the grammar. I didn't have a good control of the pronunciation. And luckily, I did the best thing that I did all year. I joined a French class, and not just any French class, but I joined French Class NYC. Mikael is the teacher, and he is the owner of French Class NYC. And I say this was the best thing that I did all year because Mikael's classes changed everything that I thought about the French language. And I really went from like having very, very little confidence to being so okay with making mistakes and sounding silly and saying the wrong thing. And that's what I was really looking for, because I was dealing with that intimidation factor with the language, and I just didn't want to be intimidated anymore. So I took these classes with Mikael, I think 6 weeks or so, because I started a little late, but really changed my life. Really changed my life and changed the way that I am able to communicate in the French language. I think what was really great about classes with Mikael is that he just has a conversation. And even though I was at a beginner level, advanced beginner level, and feeling like I'm not ready for conversation, like I can't converse, I can't say all these things, but those classes really showed me that you don't have to be fluent in order to have a conversation. And I think that was the lesson that I needed to understand. You don't need to be fluent and perfect in order to communicate. And that really changed my mindset. It changed how I felt about approaching the language and learning it and being able to communicate in this language, which is what I needed. So that happened in March, April of 2021. And it was really great because it gave me a structure. Like, he gave us homework, and I would spend so much time doing my homework every weekend, and looking into things that, I wanted to say, and writing down my questions. And I'll be perfectly honest, I did more homework in this French class NYC than I did in college, than I did in the classes I took, the French classes I took outside of college. I just never did my homework when I was in school. And I did my homework. Let me just take a step back. I did my homework, but I didn't really care about my homework. I didn't spend so much time just trying to nail it, trying to get it right. And I really took it for granted. So this was definitely the first time when I said, okay, I'm gonna make this count. I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna make something of this. So, can you see Ursula back there? Usually she's over here, and today she's over here. But there was the first time that I actually was like, dedicated and wanting to succeed because I had the right mindset about it. And the other thing that I did was I had some people from Instagram who I know and people who followed me and I followed them on Instagram who were native French speakers and reached out to me and said, if you want to exchange French to English, I can help you. And I have to say, like, that was the greatest thing. And one of the greatest things I experienced this year was the number of people who wrote to me and said, I can help you. I'd be so happy to help you. Let me know. Anytime you want to practice French, I'm here. It's just people who reached out to me and were so willing to help me, like that. It made me a little emotional. Like I'm really grateful for all those people who offered their time and their guidance and their help. And I started to see a change between like those first classes with Mika. I saw the changes between the first class I had with Mikael and the last class. So from April until now, I've seen so much of an improvement where I don't even recognize the person that I was last year when it comes to French. Like I'm just a completely different person. So when it comes to my life studying French after the class that I took in the spring, I noticed I'm so proud of myself. It's a small thing, but I'm really proud of myself. Like I notice when I'm having conversations with my language partners, it's so much easier for me to understand and follow along the story that they're trying to tell me. I don't get every word. I don't understand everything. And I have good days and bad days like everybody else. But the fact that I can listen to someone tell me a story in French and pick up most of it or enough of it so that I can respond, I'm like, girl, I can't believe it. I really can't believe it when I really think about it. What a difference an entire year has made in studying this one language. And it's definitely the longest stretch I've ever spent on a language outside of school. And certainly in the French language, like I only had 5 months of French in college, and this has been a whole year, and I've learned so much. So some of the things that I've tried to focus on is just the stuff that I was struggling with a little bit earlier in the year, particularly Lampafe versus Passé Composé, which I got it now, but I still slip up sometimes and I totally forget about using Lampafe. And, especially when I see it, I have to just think again. And honestly, I'm just really happy that I can understand people. I can basically communicate. And it's been a really great year for it to have gone the way that it did. Like I couldn't ask for things to be any better if I had, obviously I wasn't going to become fluent, but I really couldn't have asked for a better year in kind of studying this language. So one thing that I've really been focusing on this year also is comprehension. Another thing I've really been focusing on this year is comprehension. And I realized how low my comprehension was last year this time and at the beginning of this year. And seeing how much my comprehension has improved has been, wow. It's been so meaningful for me. Like I can read something in French, I can listen to something basic in French and kind of understand it. A couple of things that I've done to help me improve my comprehension. There's this really wonderful podcast called Passerelle, and the host is Emily, and she's a French teacher. I'm not sure where she's located, but her podcast is completely in French, and it's a little bit above my level, but the way that she speaks and the clarity with which she speaks, and the consistency, it really helps me to just kind of understand, like, very understand how to construct sentences and how to pronounce things as well. I've also been using Vogue France and videos on Vogue France because I feel like there's a lot of topics there on that channel on YouTube, that a lot of topics that I really love, like fashion, beauty, celebrity lifestyle, all that kind of, there's a couple of series that they have on there, and I watch them. I also watch some French influencers and YouTubers as well who, talk about makeup and clothes and lifestyle, and that's been really interesting, just kind of hearing that colloquial way of speaking French and trying to understand, because those videos are not subtitled, so it's really difficult for me to listen, but it helps to train my ear, and that's been really helpful for me. I will say the one thing that has not helped me at all is music. And so many people have told me, oh, listen to music, listen to Stromae, listen to MC Solar or whatever, which is like, why did I pick those two examples? But, so many people say listen to French music, and I'm not averse to that because there's a lot of really good French music out there, particularly for me. Like, I love French hip hop, and French pop music is really good too. But the reality is that, there are words that they use in these songs that I just don't understand, and the way that they stylize when they're singing, depending on the singer, it can be very difficult to understand. And then in the case of hip hop, a lot of times things have double meanings, which is probably why I said MC Solar, because a lot of his songs have double meanings, like most of his songs do. So music hasn't really helped me. And another thing that hasn't been so helpful has been like movies and television. There are some shows that I'll watch, and I try to watch at least one show or movie a week in French, and I enjoy them. Like, I enjoy the subject matter and I enjoy what they're talking about, but realistically speaking, it's very hard when your level is like here to try to understand somebody talking on a native level. It's like completely different. So I've watched the same shows as everybody else. Lupin, 10%, Family Business, The Hookup Plan. I've watched all these same shows, and I will say that, for example, Family Business, there was one season of that show and I didn't understand a single thing that anybody was saying. And it wasn't until I actually switched the subtitles to French and I was able to read it, and I said, oh, okay, now I understand. But like, just listening to it, it didn't make any sense to me. And so for me, that's why I say it's always great to watch a good show in any language, to be fair, but I haven't really relied so much on French language shows and movies to really help me with my comprehension. I've mostly been using TED Talks, are really great. YouTube videos from like the news, French news or Vogue in this situation, and podcasts have really been wonderful. And I'm really happy because, like I said, my comprehension has it's gone up so much. So I'm really looking forward to what I'll be able to understand next year and what I'll be able to do with this language in the future. I feel like a new door was open for me. Another thing that my language partner actually has me doing, and let me take a step back about the language partner thing, because early on when I started looking for people to talk with, you have to understand this was in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. This was the Black Lives Matter was alive and kicking, swinging, and I was at a point as a Black woman, I was at a point where I really felt like I want to connect with Black French speakers. And although not everyone that I spoke to and learned from is a black person, I did intentionally try to find partners that were black because I realized like I needed that space to want to talk about what was going on in our community, not just in the US, but around the world. And I didn't really feel like I wanted to have to justify myself. I wanted to be able to just speak and be myself and have this kind of safeness in speech. So most of my language partners are black. A few of them are white, which is great because diversity is important. But I just wanted to make that clear. So I think that's a really important thing for black language learners actually is to, try to find those spaces where you can find people who look like you and people who can relate to your experience because I think it develops the richness of what you're trying to talk about when you have a subject like your hair or you have a subject like, you know, office politics or like things that kind of affect us all, but you don't really know how to say them and maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody who's not black about these things, or maybe someone who's not black doesn't have the vocabulary or doesn't feel comfortable talking about them with you. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But I think that my language partner, what I was starting to say is that my language partner, he has gotten me to try to read out loud in French. And that's something that I really ignored for such a long time, aside from like, those little baby sentences that you read when you're acting out a scenario. And we've been reading beyond that. So just kind of like a bilingual book that he found, and we've both been taking turns. I read in French, he reads in English. And it's really been eye-opening for me because I didn't realize how much of a skill and you have to pay attention when you're reading something out loud. Like the process is different. And the way that your mind processes is so different. That's been another game changer. That's really been another game changer for me. So it's been a year. It's really been a year, and I surprised myself, and I'm really happy with the progress that I made. Going forward in 2022, a few things that I'm really looking forward to doing is I'm not really focused on getting to a specific level like B1, B2. That will come in time. I know that's gonna come. It's gonna happen. What I'm really focused on for next year is really getting a good understanding of the tenses in French and how they work and how to use them. Like I want to know them back and front. And maybe not every single tense or the more rare tenses, but definitely the ones that I use every day. The ones that'll help me read a magazine or help me to follow a newscast, or maybe even help me get into understanding the dialogue in some of these French shows that I'm watching. So that's really going to be my first priority in 2022. The other thing, and I know I need to focus on vocabulary, but that's kind of the least of my issues right now because I know vocabulary is kind of circumstantial. It'll come when it's time. But I really want to focus on getting back to writing in a journal because the journal that I started at the beginning of the year, a year ago, I didn't continue writing in it. Just, from time to time, I would write a couple sentences or a paragraph. So I really want to get back to writing every day, and that would be really helpful for me, at least in understanding the accents and where the accents go and where the accents are supposed to be. So I think I'm going to write more next year. That's going to be a goal of mine, to just do more writing. And I think my ultimate goal, which is going to happen at some point, I want to have a conversation 100% in French with somebody. Not something really, really, some heavy political crazy topic. Nothing crazy, but I want to have a conversation completely in French with somebody where I don't have to, comme on dit, or I don't have to switch to English. I don't have to question like anything. I really want to be able to do that. I think that would be such a proud moment for me when I'm able to do that. And I hope to tell you all about it when I do get to that point. Maybe it could be something that I could even get footage of and post it. So we'll see. But so that's been my journey with French language. I'm not fluent yet. I don't know if I'll ever be fluent, and I'm okay with that because I can communicate. And I tell myself, I manifest this, that I speak French, and I'm speaking French. Not in this video, but I can do it. So I hope you'll follow along with my progress. I hope you'll follow along with my journey, my story. And I'll try to check in once a month to let you all know how it's going and how I'm doing in the language. And if I have any ups and downs or anything funny happens, I'll be sure to tell you here. So if you like this video, if you want to see more content like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. You can also check out episodes of my podcast on the same channel. And I hope that you'll be listening and you'll be watching more in the future. Bye for now.